So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for what is now the fourth webinar in our lockdown learning series. And today we're really going to focus on sales management and some of the things that it takes to be successful in sales management in a wholesale and distribution market, and in particular in a disrupted wholesale and distribution market, which clearly we're seeing at the moment. Today you'll be hearing from myself, Andy. I'm the CEO at ProspectSoft, and I'm joined today by Stuart McLaren, ProspectSoft's Sales and Marketing Director. And I suspect plenty of you already know Stuart or have heard from him, but Stuart's got a vast and pretty wide wealth of sales management experience, and has managed teams from a handful of people in our own startup in SMEs through to sales teams in much bigger companies, of over 30 people in those teams, and ranging from telesales to field sales to new biz and to account management. And obviously, while Stuart's had a lot of experience in software, before that, he's actually worked in the motor trade, and also had a career in physical distribution of computer hardware. So has got relevant experience to bring, not just in sales management, but more specifically in wholesale and distribution sales management. So you'll be hearing from Stuart fairly shortly. Just before though, so there's a few bits for me. First of all, I really just want to mention sales, marketing, and operations alignment. And marketing and sales alignment is a bit of a hot topic at the moment. A lot of people talking about this, and it's easy to dismiss, but it really is pretty important. So in the last couple of webinars, we've been talking about market strategy and marketing execution, and really we spent quite a lot of time talking about market strategy and being clear who your ICPs and personas are. So that's your ideal customer profile, and then the people that you engage with in trying to close sales with those ideal customer profiles. And it's very easy for somebody in marketing, or maybe it's the MD or somebody to create that market strategy and not then go through the process of agreeing those ICPs and personas with the sales team. So it's really important, if you're the sales manager in one of these businesses, have you agreed those ICPs and the personas with the marketing team? Are you happy that they're going to be bringing the right people into the sales process? And the truth is, no matter how well agreed that is, it won't be right. It won't be perfect, and it may need to change over time. So it's also important that there's an agreed plan and feedback process, so that you can feedback your experience of getting those people into the sales process, and helping the marketing team to improve the way they target those people, or make sure they're getting the right people in, and have some debate with them. And while it's talked about a lot less, it's equally important, maybe even more so, that what sales and marketing agree in terms of ICPs and personas is also agreed through the operations team and either the product procurement team or the product development team. And really here we're asking pretty simple questions. Are we confident that our products and our after sales service can live up to the marketing and sales promises? If we bring in this ideal customer profile and we engage with those personas and tell them things we're gonna do for them, when they actually get our products, or they receive our service through our operations team, will they love us? Not only are they people we can sell to, but are they people we can serve? And at the end of the whole thing, will they recommend us, after they've signed up to our products? And will they give us 5-star reviews on public sites? Because if they're not going to, then either we need to change our ops and our products, or these people are fundamentally not the right ICPs and personas for us to be going after. One note of caution I would give is that what brings people in may not be quite the same thing as the thing that closes the deal or the thing that makes them happy with the product. Clearly, if that's the case, they need to sort of dovetail and work together. They can't be at odds with each other. But just to give you one simple example that we have in our business, we know that when wholesale and distribution companies generally are looking for a CRM system, it's because they're trying to increase the number of new opportunities and sales they're making through their funnel. And I would say 8 times out of 10, when we get into the process, we find that what they actually need is to improve their flywheel. And obviously, improvements in the funnel are great, but actually improvements in the flywheel would substantially improve their business much more than improving their funnel. And if you're not sure what that funnel and flywheel means, you should probably go back to the first webinar, but I'll be mentioning it in a second as well. So today is all about the successful sales manager's playbook, assuming that we've already got that market strategy in place, and that the ICPs and personas have already been agreed through marketing, sales, and operations. And of course, there are a million books and blogs and articles on sales management. But the point of this webinar is that every business is different. Every business is different in size, route to market, product, services, and in many other ways. So this webinar is pretty specific. We're going to focus on the things that we've learned either in our own experience or more importantly from helping thousands of businesses like yours who are B2B SMEs who manufacture or wholesale or distribute physical products to other businesses. And we're going to be focusing on the challenges faced by sales managers in those businesses and who are trying to grow the revenues for those businesses. So I mentioned the funnel and the flywheel earlier, but if you're running a physical business, a business selling physical products, wholesaling, distributing those products, as I described, then these are the key execution areas for those businesses. So obviously we need to generate leads and attract new business into our business, and we have to close that new business to get customers on board. But we then do have a fairly critical process. I'm going to come to this right at the end with some more detail, but we've got a really critical process of onboarding those customers. So if we want repeat customers, we can prove it time and again that getting the second, third, and fourth order are quite hard, but are the critical orders to get. Because once you've got the second, third, and fourth orders, those customers will keep coming back to you and buying things from you, even if you're not doing an awful lot of engagement with those customers. And then, of course, retention is critical for keeping customers for as long as possible to maximize the lifetime value. If we can upsell them along the way, either increase the value or the frequency of orders that they're placing with us, then that inevitably will increase the average lifetime value. And while we don't like to lose customers, if customers do start slipping away, if we can reactivate a percentage of those, then again, the actual average lifetime value from all of our customers then goes up substantially as well. So that's our funnel and our flywheel. And as I say, if you've joined this webinar series in the middle, whether you're in marketing, sales, or ops, and if you aren't familiar with this flywheel and funnel concept, or if you don't know an awful lot of RFM, which is a segmentation process to help you track customers through this journey, then I'd really urge you to, even if you're not going to watch the whole series, go back and watch the first one, where we really talk about how to use this funnel with flywheel and how to use RFM and what it can do for you throughout that process. But essentially, a successful wholesale distribution or manufacturing business requires a really good balance across this funnel and this flywheel. So if those are the key execution areas for our business and things that our sales and marketing teams need to execute upon, then as a sales manager, the question is, what are the things that we need to put in place right across all of those execution areas so that we can successfully drive revenue and, more importantly, growth in revenue quarter on quarter, year on year. So some of the key things that we've identified working with our customers over the years is an org chart, but not an ordinary org chart. There's a special kind of org chart, which we'll talk about in a second. People, the playbooks that we give those people, KPIs and getting the right KPIs in place, analysis, and change. And we'll kind of go through and explain what each of those are and how to implement them in this kind of classic business structure. So when it comes to organization charts, we're not talking about just boring few boxes drawn on a piece of paper. This is really it's a mechanism for solving the many hats problem. So what is the many hats problem? And every sales manager in any SME business I've ever met complains or at least talks about, not necessarily complains, but talks about having to wear lots of different hats and control lots of different things. And inevitably what happens is that some hats should get more attention and focus than they do. Some get lost or forgotten completely, for months on end. And some of the hats we wear actually need delegating to someone else. Now, if you're running a sales team in a B2B SME, whether it's a small SME or a big SME, then you do have to juggle hats. That is a fact. But the challenge is getting that juggling right and the balance between those hats right. And there's a slightly fun, I use that word loosely, fun way of trying to establish that balance. So we've probably all got organization charts for the business that we currently run. And if you don't, I'm pretty sure you could create one on a scrap of paper pretty quickly, just putting in the people that work for you and work around in support of the sales team. You'd have a fairly basic organization chart if you did that. But what we're looking to do here is build our 10x org chart. So this is the organization chart you would ideally have if you were a sales manager of the same business, but the business was 10 times larger. So think about what the structure you would need if money was no object. How would you best manage and run the sales teams that you need to run, and how would you structure that so that you would successfully grow the sales and the revenue in your business? So would you have a regional structure? Would you have a multi-channel structure? Would you have a multi-product structure? Would you organize the team into marketing development reps, sales development reps, sales executives who are closing the deals? Would you have onboarding reps assisting the account manager during that kind of heavyweight onboarding process and getting the focus in there? Or would you just leave that to the account managers? Would you support the account managers with account development reps? That's a classic in terms of this kind of many hats. I know that in most SMEs, the sales team that brings in new business also then does the account development for the big upsells, or the account managers do the day-to-day and try and do the account development as well. And so that's the kind of classic thing that we're trying to split out here. So don't worry about the fact that at the moment you've got somebody doing 5 of these jobs. We'll get to that in a second. Just concentrate on if you could ideally split it all out and get really focused teams focusing on all the things that need to be done and done well, then what organization chart would you draw? And then once you've done that, try and put names into every box you've drawn for either you or somebody in your team based on what they actually do now. So that gives you all of the hats that you've got and all of the hats that your team wear today in their current activity. And a couple of things you can very immediately identify are anybody with too many hats. They are likely to be underperforming merely because they're juggling too many different things. And also, obviously, watch out for empty boxes. If you've drawn boxes in your ideal process, things that really need to get done, if money was no object and you could employ as many people as you like, what are the things that you would get done that nobody is taking charge of at the moment? And obviously, given that I've already said these are the 6 key areas of execution across sales and marketing, if you don't have somebody doing these things and you can't see where these things fit into your 10x chart, then you probably need to adjust things. So the final bit of this process is that once you've got this organization chart and you've put yourself in 6, 7, 8 of these boxes, and you've taken each of your current sales team and put them in 3, 4, 5 of these boxes, all that really tells you is all the different hats you're having to wear and all the things you're trying to juggle. But if you then imagine that you've got a 500k salary budget or £1 million salary budget, doesn't really matter what it is, in order to hire people to support you in doing your role, then try and spread that 500k across all the roles that you do today. So all of the boxes that you've put your name in, and spread that based on how much of that 500k budget you would assign for hiring someone to help you in that activity or that role. And if you've then put some very low numbers into some of those boxes, that really tells you those are things that you don't consider to be that important, and you should just try and find somebody else in the team and give it to them and delegate that one away immediately. But for the rest, the end of this exercise tells you how much of your energy and focus you should spend wearing each of those hats, because you've now given them, through this kind of fun game, you've given them a very clear score of how much you value that exercise and that activity. So you know how much focus and energy to give to each. You should then commit to wearing each one of those hats one at a time, and try and avoid wearing several at once. And based on the monetary value you assign to each, you should be committing that percentage of your energy to each hat. And then, of course, you can repeat that exercise for each person that you employ. So if one of the people you employ is in 6 of those boxes, take another 500k budget and spread that through those 6 boxes. And then you can tell them how much of each of those roles that they do you value in terms of the business growth, and get them to spread their focus and time that way. And obviously, as you grow, this 10x organization chart can also, help you to focus on employing people that take responsibility off you for some of those kind of minor hats that you wear. So hopefully that's a useful exercise that you can do to kind of help focus your energy and make sure you're covering all of the bases. I'm now going to hand you over to Stuart, who's going to pick up on the next couple of topics. Stuart.
Thanks, Andy. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, so the next couple of bits, people, and specifically managing a sales team, but bearing in mind what Andrew's just been through, and knowing, as Andrew pointed out, that plenty of sales teams, the sales people themselves have to wear a couple of hats at least, in terms of perhaps being responsible for new business and maybe then account managing as well. But I mean, one of the simplest and most obvious things, and I'm sure everyone will feel that it's an obvious thing, is weekly sales meetings. But I mean, it never ceases to amaze me how many businesses I have visited that don't have a structure of weekly sales meetings. It's much more ad hoc. And I mean, I guess I would say this, wouldn't I? But that for me, the clearest and best way to run a weekly sales meeting, and I still run ours, would be to run it from your CRM system. And the reason I say that is that you're not then kind of asking people in the meeting at the beginning, oh, what are you working on and what are you working on? Actually, you know, you may well have run the reports before the meeting and you'll have taken command of the meeting and you'll be able to say, okay, Jeff, the CRM says you're working on 3 opportunities. That clearly isn't enough. You're never going to hit your target this month, you know, or Fred, I can see that you've got 300 open opportunities and they're not really moving anywhere. You've got far too much there. We need to go through this and either pass some to other people or kill off the ones that just are not going anywhere. And, you know, but the point is that you've got factual data in front of you from the CRM system. That exactly which reports you run in that meeting will perhaps come on to when we talk about KPIs, and it'll depend on your business, obviously. But for me, if you invest in a CRM system and you've got it there to help the sales guys do more business and to help you monitor and improve, push in the sales meetings to achieve the strategies and the targets that you've got, then there really is no excuse for not having recorded in the CRM system what they're doing. And so certainly in our business, you know, it's no good someone coming to one of our sales meetings, me pulling up their report and it's showing that their activity has been, you know, lacking or empty, and them saying, oh, yeah, no, I did do all these things, but I haven't put it in the CRM system. My answer always is, if it isn't in the CRM system, as far as I'm concerned, it didn't happen. And I mean, I'd go as far to say that, you know, if you've invested decent money and your strategy as a company is that you're going to use a CRM system to help you achieve what you want to achieve, if you've got salespeople that aren't using it or refusing to use it, I'd move them on. I mean, you just can't operate in that way. You know, if that's the strategy, then you need to get them on board with it. And certainly running a weekly sales meeting, there's not many sales guys that want to sit in a weekly sales meeting and be embarrassed because when you pull up their stats, it looks like they've done nothing all last week. You know, so that is a problem that normally fixes itself pretty quickly. I thought it was also worth mentioning that just because of what's going on at the moment and the fact that we're all working from home, actually for me and for us, it hasn't made very much difference in terms of the sales meetings. Obviously, we have, you know, we use Prospect CRM ourselves, and having a shared cloud CRM system becomes even more critical because, you know, nobody needs to be in the office. But I think for managing remote sales workers, and I mean, there's a lot more people working from home at the moment, clearly, but for a lot of businesses, that's the way they operate with area reps and area managers. But the one thing I'd say is, for those meetings, the virtual meetings that you do, you want to screen share and use exactly the same reports that I'm talking about, but you need a good meeting structure. You definitely need to have focus on the reports that you're going through and the people that you're addressing one by one in that meeting, and then shared benefit and shared knowledge on things that have gone on in the sales meeting, and kind of total clarity on the fact that, you know, these are the things that we're going to be measuring week on week in these meetings, and it's important that people are A, there, and B, have recorded all the stuff that they're doing in the CRM system. So yeah, I think, I mean, for us, it's not made a huge difference to our process. It just means that it's a slightly different medium, and it becomes a bit more important in terms of making sure that we've got the structure around those meetings. So moving on to playbooks, and Andrew mentioned the playbook for the sales manager, and it's again critical that all of this is knitted in to the other things that Andrew and Jess have been discussing in the previous webinars, in terms of the ICP and the persona. And so when we're talking about a sales playbook, so this is the manual for your salespeople to be able to sell your product and service the way you want it sold, and as you learn and move forwards, the best way the most successful way for it to be sold. So you can start one of these, and I mean, you really haven't got to worry if it isn't perfect to start with. You can test it, change it, correct it, improve it later as you go on, and we're working on ours all the time. The critical thing is to get it written down, though, and have it as an actual physical playbook. So there's all sorts of things you can read about playbooks, and particularly sales playbooks online. There's all manner of information about them. I mean, for me, the critical bits of it are you kind of want the sales scenario, those first three here, the sales scenario, the vertical specific buyer personas. So that's really fed in from your ICP personas, and the company size. And then you can build the streams that you might have, different vertical markets could be another one for those. And you can build the streams that might have slightly different playbooks depending on the scenario, the vertical market, the ICPs if you've got more than one, or the company size. You might deal with those slightly differently, but you can put it all in one playbook with different streams, and that's exactly how we operate. But then for each of those streams, the really important part is to go through the sales stages that you see being the perfect sale for that particular stream. So from planning to discovery, is there a pilot, are there samples, what are the steps that we should go through that mean at the end of the process we get the perfect sale, the perfect result, the maximum, we maximize the opportunity. And then supporting material, you might have some external facing content that the sales guys can draw on, like case studies and data sheets and brochures and so on and so forth, and some internal content that can be reminders, battle cards, training videos, internal messaging and positioning from marketing in the ICP, so that they know what it is they're looking for and what they're trying to attract. But as I say, the most critical thing, and you can adjust this and hone it as you go on, is to get it recorded and accessible for everybody, and go through it regularly to remind people. So, I mean, you can use, there's a plethora of tools available these days, but if you use a Microsoft Teams wiki page, for example, that you can share within Microsoft Teams, or if you use SharePoint, put a SharePoint page up with the sales playbook on, or, a OneNote, even a Word document stored somewhere centrally that everybody can access would do. The important thing is to get it recorded, written down, where everybody can find it. And I'm not saying as a sales manager you want to go and shut yourself in a room and build this on your own. It needs to be a collaborative effort, because obviously the sales guys need to they have good knowledge to put into it to help build it, but also they need to then buy into it and understand what it is they should do at each of the stages through that playbook. So having built the playbook, one of the most obvious things then to do is to start mirroring that playbook in your CRM where it's applicable to do so. So for your, and again, some of these acronyms from previous webinars, but the marketing qualified leads. So these are leads, the marketing have qualified as being successful opportunities to pass on to sales. So we should have the analysis fields in the CRM so that we can analyze those. We also did the sales accepted leads, which is kind of in between these two. You'll see in the slide I've introduced another acronym just for the hell of it, which is a sales generated lead. But we've then got a sales qualified lead, which is once we've actually, the sales team have qualified their budget, whatever the qualification criteria is for your particular products, and then set up the workflows and pipelines to match your playbook, so that you can put these people, depending on their various criteria, the vertical market, the product, the size of the business, whatever, into the correct workflow, and then have the reports on all of those things that you can use in the sales meeting to see how far people are getting through those playbooks with each of those types of people and measure the results. Now, we'll go into this a lot more next week, where we're getting into the practicalities of what we're discussing in this webinar and doing that in the CRM system. And so we'll be showing a lot more of this kind of stuff next week. Really what we're talking about is the theory this week and how you want to get yourself set up and the things that you need to think about in order to move forwards. The KPIs, key performance indicators, and I guess, you can lump into that regular must review data. This really these are part of the critical reporting that you're going to want for regular reporting. So, if we look at KPIs, and we've got my KPIs for wholesale and distribution here. It's difficult to try and be prescriptive on this, because obviously businesses in different industries of different sizes selling different products to different markets vary widely. But these will be, in general, monthly, rolling 6 month, or perhaps rolling 6 month velocity measures for things like, and I'd encourage you to think about all of these. So depending on whether you have a bigger outbound sales prospecting activity, are your salespeople responsible for outbound activity? Is part of their job to do some cold calling, to find some potential opportunities when they're, if their reps driving around, should they find potential opportunities and, make a note of the names, put them in the CRM system and try and make appointments to go and see them. So, and you can measure all of these things. For me, actually, I think anyone in sales should still do some outbound. I think it's a good discipline and keeps you sharp. I still do some cold calling from time to time. But again, you want to measure the critical points, the key performance indicators. And so these KPIs obviously will depend on what your business strategic goals are, really. So, for example, if one of the main things for the business at the moment is to get 100 new customers, for this exercise, we'll presume that it's through pure outbound sales activity. In other words, on top of the marketing efforts. To get 100 new customers by the end of the year, then you'll need to look at the steps in your playbook and set the SMART targets and measure and report on those. So it might be the number of calls, and you'll want to measure the type of calls. We measure not only the type of calls, as in were they successful connections or not, and how long were the calls, but what type of individual were they to, and so were they to a key decision maker or not. At a target organization. So the types of calls, the personas that they're speaking to, or, if it's visit based, how many of the visits were account management visits? How many were new business opportunity visits? And then for orders, how many orders did I take? And how many of those were proactive orders? So, and you can look at internal sales as well as field sales for that. Does your internal sales team simply answer the phone and take orders on a passive or incoming basis, a reactive basis, or do you have them targeted for some proactive outbound order getting? And have you got the system set up so that it tells them which people they should be calling to get the next order? So, and then leads and opportunities and outcomes. So that's kind of for outbound, So leads and opportunities and it might be that actually the most important thing, as Andrew was saying, in the fullness of time, when you look at the data that you've got, is to stop a leaky bucket, just to reduce churn or stop the customer attrition, not to lose as many customers. So although I do want to onboard new customers, actually, if I could hold on to more customers for longer, buying more and increasing average order values, that would grow my business quicker. So then you'd need to focus on the RFM, the recency, frequency, and monetary value by customer, account management activity and outcomes, and perhaps that proactive order generation. So, we'd be looking at the opportunities for resell and upsell, the ones, how many reactivations are we going on? And again, how many proactive outbound sales orders are we taking? So, and then for, across the whole set of data, you perhaps looking at conversion rates. So the sales accepted leads from marketing and sales generated as above, the total number in and the conversion percentages by sector, by size, by salesperson, and the sales qualified leads. So, how many of those were valuable to make it through? And then once they become a sales qualified lead, how many of those are we getting through? And obviously, ultimately, the opportunity, success, and wins. So, I mean, those are typical KPIs. As I say, every business has its own strategies and goals, and will differ slightly, but those, I think, are the kind of things that people want to be getting into their KPIs and measuring on a rolling basis, and the velocity of increase or not. So let me hand back with that to Andrew to go into some of the analysis.
Okay, so analysis, and I think one of the things I want to stress is that this is not the same as KPIs. I think way too many business owners and business managers confuse KPIs with analysis. If you were in a really big business, you would have potentially some data analysts whose sole job it is to do analysis, and that's not the same as just looking at the KPIs. So, how is this different? So KPIs tell you, week in, week out, month in, month out, quarter in, quarter out, what's working and what's not at the highest level across your business. And the analysis, the process of analysis is the process of figuring out why things are working or not. So looking at the data and digging into that data and understanding the trends that are causing parts of your plan to or your process to fail. So, if your KPI doesn't have good velocity, isn't increasing quickly enough, then that's what the KPI is telling you. It's telling you it's not increasing. The analysis is the thing that you're going to do to try and figure out why not. How can you improve or refine what you're doing so that your KPI does gain positive velocity? And sometimes, unfortunately, it is more complicated maths, more spreadsheets, more what ifs, more graphical trend analysis, standard deviations, that kind of thing. And it can be a tough job for some businesses, but there's always a level of analysis that you can go to on your own, and there's a level of analysis that you can get if you bring in experts and maths geniuses and that sort of thing. And I think probably the best way to illustrate the difference between KPIs and analysis is to show you some analysis. So this is some analysis that actually we did across a range of customers, just when we were looking for some advice to give to those individual customers and some general advice as we're kind of helping businesses to be successful. So this is a customer who distributes physical products to customers. They're actually perhaps not the best example in the lockdown, because this is distributing products to cafes and hotels. But clearly, hopefully the lockdown will be over soon and we'll be back to this. But the same principle applies in all sorts of businesses. So what we've got on this chart, I'll try and avoid confusing too many people and getting into too much maths, but up the y-axis, so that's the vertical axis up the side, the numbers 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, that is the number of days between each order and then the next one. So it's the number of days that it's taken to get from the second to the third order, from the third to the fourth order. And along the bottom, along the x-axis, we've got that order, the nth order. So it actually starts not with the first order, but it starts with the second order. And how long after the first order did that second order come in? How long after that did the third order come in, the fourth order, the 20th, the 40th, the 60th order? And you can see we've done this analysis over a fairly long period of time. The orange dots are the average, and the white dots are the standard deviation. You don't have to worry about what standard deviation is too much, other than it tries to get rid of the outliers and try and get a bit of more of a trend going. But actually, you can see on this chart that you get a pretty similar result across them both. And what we can see in this business, and again, this is repeated across loads of businesses we did this analysis on, we can see the average time between the first and second order is about 30 days, with a pretty wide standard deviation. So the standard deviation is pretty wide from the average. So that's the line uses the top standard deviation. You can see that's pretty wide between the average. So up to sort of 52 days to get the second order. And then you can see that declines pretty rapidly over the first 5 orders, with the average falling quickly and the standard deviation closing in on the average over that sort of first 4 or 5 orders. And what this really tells us is that this business and the customers that it brings in, those customers don't become settled regular customers until they've placed at least the 4th or the 5th order. So what's actually happening is they're going out and they're taking some samples, or they're buying some product, at a given point, and then it takes them a little while to sell that and get used to selling that, and then they buy a bit more. But when they run out, maybe they don't notice immediately, and because it's not their best seller at the moment, their regular seller, that they're not ordering that regularly. But if you keep working at that customer and keep getting them to buy it, after the 4th or 5th order, they're now selling it regularly. They're used to selling it. They're used to stocking it. They're used to repurchasing it. And actually, what we then find is that once they've placed the first 4 or 5 orders, it becomes way more likely that they'll just come along and place the next order pretty frequently. Within 14 days, actually, in this business, it pretty much settles down into a 14-day or less period. And they just settle into this weekly or bi-weekly purchasing pattern, with relatively, by comparison, less effort necessary to just keep getting those orders over time. So that analysis tells us that's a really critical bit, that first 4 or 5 orders. What was actually more compelling, so that was quite interesting and told us a lot about the business, but what was much more compelling was the attempted reactivation of potentially churning customers. So this chart looks at weeks going along the bottom, so that 10, 20, 30, 40 is the number of weeks that have gone by, and the y-axis going up the left is the percentage chance of getting another order out of somebody during that period after they've stopped their regular buying pattern. So once they've fallen into a category of at risk or lost, and again, if you don't know what that is, go back and watch the RFM, but once they've gone into the at risk or lost, what is the likely chance of winning them back over time? And what is really compelling, I mean, there's a bit of sort of bumpiness in this chart, but in the first 5 weeks, you've got a pretty good chance of getting them back. I mean, you won't win back every customer. Some of them will be dead set on moving to a different supplier, but it's a 20 to 25% chance of winning them back in that first 5 weeks. And after you get 10 weeks out, it then becomes a 10% or rapidly down to a 5% chance of winning them back. And what that really told us is if we want to tighten up the retention and avoid the leaky bucket for this business, we really have to jump on people that fall into that at-risk category and stop them churning, within a 4 or 5 week period. And it's really interesting that actually that when you think about it, this is the reverse of the previous analysis, where these customers who are moving away are probably buying a competitor's product. The product being sold here is something that cafes and hotels have to buy, basically. So they're engaging a competitor, and that competitor is in that first 1 to 5 order period. And so that competitor is trying to embed their products in. And while they're in that process trying to embed them in, your chances of winning your business back is pretty high. Once the competitor is embedded, your chances of winning them back is particularly low. So this is the analysis that tells us what we need to change. Why have we got a leaky bucket? How is that happening, and what can we do about it? So that's KPIs and analysis. And then I just want to introduce the process of delivering change. So you've looked at your KPIs, you're struggling in a particular area or not doing as well as you'd like. You've then done some analysis, or even ringing customers and asking them, or talking to your salespeople, whatever it is you've done to figure out what is the thing that you think you need to change. And then you need an actual process for delivering that change. And without wanting to introduce yet another acronym, that there is a pretty popular process called OKRs. And this isn't something we've made up. This is a pretty standard process, and I'll talk about where you can find out more about it in a second. But OKRs are about driving change. So it's about setting an objective for change. So it's not we will sell 10 systems this month, or we will sign up 10 customers this month. It is about a change that you want to get. And so you set an objective of change, or rectification or improvement. And then you define some key results that are not necessarily KPIs, but they are the key results that for a limited period of time, you're going to track in order to track the progress and the change that occurs as you focus on this thing. And really, it's about focusing on the outcome as a manager, focus on the outcome and the key results you're going to use to measure that outcome, and then being able to delegate the action and the tasks to the people who you're giving this OKR to. And so it's really about the way it works is you set the objective typically as a quarterly objective, and then you set one or more key results that help you to identify the progress and how far you want to get with those objectives. So those are your metrics. And then you delegate to the team planning the initiatives, the things that they're going to do, the activities that are going to deliver on that objective and that key result. And it goes back to a classic management principle of, I don't care how you're going to do it. I just want it done. These are the objectives I want at the end of this. This is objective for the quarter, and these are the results I want to see at the end. It's up to you to figure out how the hell are you going to deliver on that. And obviously you can help them with that and collaborate, but it is important that you're not simply setting tasks. So good OKRs are about setting objectives, not giving out tasks. It is about measuring the results, not the activity. Doing lots of things when it comes to OKRs is not enough. It is about the results. It is about delegating the responsibility for delivering those results and outcomes, not delegating responsibility for doing lots of rubbish or running around like a headless chicken. It is simply about delivering the results and outcomes that the business requires. And so it tends to work on a quarterly cadence. It doesn't have to be quarterly, but it's set and agree those objectives and those key results in a quarterly cadence. They should be difficult to achieve, and if you are achieving 100% of all your OKRs in a quarter, you've not set enough challenging OKRs. And then once you've set that quarterly, you would report and review those with the whole team and make them responsible for reporting those key results at least bi-weekly, if not weekly. And actually, good OKRs tend to be cross-functional. So, you set the objective because that's what's important for the business. And it doesn't matter whether your job is new business or your job is account management or you're in marketing or you're in sales or you're in operations. Everybody's responsibility is delivering on the outcome. So we use OKRs in our business, and they are widely used. If you want to learn a little bit more, you can read the original book, this is a pretty famous book, and it's a good read. And if you follow it, you will create improvements and change in your business. If you're more into listening than reading, I guess you can get that on Amazon in reading format. But there's also a podcast which I've quite enjoyed called Talking Giants. And if you're looking to manage OKRs, you can do it on paper, you can do it on a spreadsheet. But there's some pretty cheap online software, lots of them available. We've tried a few, and actually none of them are brilliant, none of them are perfect. But Cohen, which is actually www.cohen.co, that's not a typo, it is just literally just co. It is a good, relatively cheap and inexpensive way to manage OKRs on a website. So just as we wrap up, I think I should just go back and re-emphasize how you use KPIs analysis and OKRs together. So think of KPIs as your floodlights. It uses data to help you see the whole field reasonably well, and using KPIs across a broad range of areas of the business to light up the whole field and show you what's going on across the whole business and the whole department. OKRs are the spotlight that you use to shine a bright light and focus the audience's attention on part of the play or part of the performance on the stage. And that then moves around to different players at different times, depending on what's the important thing there and then at that moment. And analysis is the process of using your data or gathering new data to figure out where to shine the spotlight next. So that's what KPIs, OKRs, and analysis are and how they fit together. So by way of a summary, really pretty much the first slide that we brought up. So the organization chart and the 10x org chart, managing the people, setting up the playbook so that everybody knows what's expected, and how to run, not every sale, but how to run the best sale, and really encourage people to build and put their knowledge in and everybody's knowledge in. So over time, everybody's running the best sale. KPIs to monitor everything that's going on, analysis to figure out what's going wrong or what could be improved, and managing the change so that you actually get that driven through and coming through as improvement and positive velocity on your KPIs. So that pretty much brings us to the end of this session. So thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you Stuart for helping with this webinar.
Yes, thank you everybody.
The next one in our session, number 5, we'll actually be looking at the CRM software, and obviously for those who are on this webinar who are not currently prospect customers, hopefully you'll see something you like, but many of the things that I'll be talking about are relevant to people with another CRM system, or anybody using Excel or otherwise. So please do join me next Tuesday at the same time for a look at actually setting up and managing sales pipelines, processes, and reporting, whether that be KPIs or getting data out for analysis, or some of the reports you can run to drive your OKRs. And of course, the final one will then follow after that. And if you want to see the full series or you want to access the previous recordings, they're all available at prospectsoft.com/webinars. So with that, thank you again for attending, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks very much.